So there is a lot of support and investment from the administration.
Are you guys a club with an advisor, or is this totally?
Well, so we are a little bit different. We don't officially have an advisor, but we do have contact people. So we do go to Lynn, the head social worker, and Miss Little, oftentimes just to get suggestions and responses, reactions to some of the stuff that we're doing. But it is everything that you see up there and everything that you will see in front of you will be done by students.
So Roy, I had the privilege of hearing you present this at Ithaca's council last year when it was just an idea, and it's gone a long way since there. So I'm curious, in terms of now it's been about a year that you've been involved in getting the organization running, what has been the most unexpected thing so far? I'm curious.
The most unexpected thing would have to be just the bathrooms. So
it goes back to the bathrooms.
It's a bricks and mortar thing.
Part of what we did for the bathrooms was go into every single one and take pictures. I have like 300 pictures or so, and just to see them, that was pretty shocking. The other shocking thing, I guess, would also be the learning a lot about the school, the system, state laws. I never really knew how much went into a single day at high school.
It's also the amount of feedback we get from students through our surveys and proposals. You know, we every week we try to do a free bake sale where we have surveys out and baked goods in order to entice students to take our surveys. And we get a lot of responses. We get over 100, sometimes 200. And when we're looking at the data, the responses are all over the place. And so it's pretty interesting that people take the time to actually look at our surveys, which is great.
Go ahead, Chris.
First, I'd like to commend the two of you for taking on this work. It is definitely needed. My question is, have we found replacements for you two yet for next year?
Yeah, well, so we do have a couple juniors already involved. Two have gone through the training, and a couple are still waiting on more juniors to come. But yeah, we've already assigned 2 people to take our roles.
Are they beating down the door to become members of student to student?
Is there beating down the door?
Yeah. Is there a waiting list?
Yeah, not exactly. But we're working on just getting the word out there, recruiting.
Yeah, about how many students are currently involved in student to student, and how many students would you like to see involved in this eventually?
So right now there are about 10 listeners, including myself, and on the advocacy side, it really is just Monty and I. And so the thing is, it doesn't really require 20, 30 students to be involved in it. Obviously, the more the merrier. But kind of on that note, what student to student is able to do does kind of depend on how many people are involved in it. But there are definitely aspects of student to student, especially communication, that really only require 1 or 2 people. And so even if it does get that low, which hopefully it won't, it still has a role and a purpose.
Getting more followers on Twitter right now.
We'll wrap up. Oh, go ahead, Michael.
I have 2 questions. The first is, how do you evaluate the program's success?
So really there's only one way to evaluate it for me. Personally, it's just if I come back here in 4 years and I see that it still exists and people are still using it, then I feel like it'll be a success.
Okay. The second is just the listening. It seems like a great idea, but you mentioned that people talk about abusive relationships and difficulties at home, and those are obviously very loaded issues for trained professionals to deal with, not just students. So even though there have been trainings, how can you really ensure confidentiality in that? You say they're just listening, but how do we ensure that advice isn't being given that could be potentially harmful? It just seems sort of.
Well, so that's a good question and a good point. That is a huge part of our training focuses on the importance of confidentiality and asking questions and how to avoid advice giving, which is harder than one might think. But also, while we're talking to students, the counselors and interns are right there. They're with us in the same room. If things get a little bit too heavy for, well, really just for the listener's sake, they're able to step in and intervene. And also, it does get sometimes pretty heavy, but in terms of how the conversations usually go, I'd say that we don't really get into the crits and the dirt of the problem, I guess. It really just serves as an avenue, kind of exploring the problem and then trying to lead them in a way or in a direction that'll enable them to really get to the heart of the problem, act as a first step.
So you're both a listener and then an advocate. So if you hear something, then you...
Right.
Yeah.
And again, that's another role of the leader, is to be involved in both of them and see if there are any ways that problems that he hears in listening can be advocated for or changed.
And just to follow up quickly, then we'll wrap up and move on to on Michael's points. Throughout the presentation, I heard about training, and essentially, I'm getting, Rowie, that you are the trainer. Essentially, most of that training, the training program is a program you've pulled from a variety of sources, Cornell and one of the programs at Cornell and a few others. And so that was my question: is who is doing the training and where did you get the training program from? But I'm hearing also that school counselors, district personnel are in those meetings as well to help with that process. So I'm just trying to figure out how this works, basically.
Yeah.
So you're training the next trainers, and it's really, this is your baby, basically, right? And that is going to be the challenge, 4 years from now, is, and the longevity of this is how well, I guess, you train the next generation. Is that what this is all about, I guess? But Roy, is there anything else? We're going to move on probably to our...
What field are you going into?
Kind of up in the air, probably international relations. Education.
But we're happy to have heard the full presentation, Rowan, and it's been a tremendous amount of work that certainly that I can see, and so we appreciate it, and it certainly is going to be out there now if it hasn't been already. So you have one more follower, I guess, Dr. Brown, correct?
Yeah, no, he was already following.
Okay. Well, I meant the other way around, actually, Dr. Brown. Yeah. So thanks, guys, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
And Dr. Brown, we're going to go right to development, correct?
I'll stand here so I can touch this board as well.
And that works like that now, Dr. Brown? Okay.
Took the comments at the last meeting about smart boards very personal.
It's a smarter board now?
It's a smarter board.
Okay, that's great.
So we're going to try a couple of different things tonight. First, I appreciate your thinking and our community's thinking at the last board meeting and since that meeting. The questions about the budget, the questions about the process have helped us. Since that meeting, Twitter has been on fire, using the hashtag ICSD budget, email, phone calls, so we've received quite a few questions. So tonight I'm hoping this has been a few minutes, sharing some of the high points or highlights on these interactions we've had with folks over the last 2 weeks and hopefully answer some of your questions and then open it up for discussion with myself and staff. Speaking of Twitter, so I'm gonna try to flow through this presentation using various hashtags to tell stories. So these hashtags will come in and people have asked tons of questions, and there are some themes. For example, and this is a tweet from Josh Bornstein, but it's come from quite a few folks. Who had input and when during this year-round budget process? So that has been a question. This is a different process, as we shared with you at the last meeting, and we spent some time trying to describe that process, and I'll share this image again. We shared with our admin team to help folks understand that the budget process for us, while different, is part of our continuous improvement process. We have conversations year-round about budget, beginning in July. And last year, we started a conversation about the IT agreement, and most recently, we've had a conversation about athletics and wellness. And in between, we've had a conversation about instructional coaching, PLC work, metrics, etc. The conversations about the work have been ongoing. This funding request that we put in front of you and in front of our community represents this work and what we see as mattering most. And then also, we know that the committee meetings are intense. We just had a curriculum committee meeting where we went through some highlights about Singapore mathematics. We talked about some other possible mathematics instructional continuous improvement efforts that we hope to implement in the coming year. So, knowing that that's been the process, I want to also show you some images. I can't think of the number of meetings we sit through to have conversations about budget throughout the year. Everything from the EIOC meetings that meet once a month, where we're talking about our instructional initiative, our continuous improvement process, and even specifically budgets, and even sometimes line items. Our conversation with the K-12 folks, outreach folks at Cornell, we meet with them on a monthly basis as well. PTA meetings. Our principals are having ongoing conversations with PTA to talk about our continuous improvement efforts, and also to talk about instructional and financial initiatives. Some other examples, just briefly, I meet with a group of students once a month, and the thing they like to talk about the most, surprisingly, has been budget. Mr. Trumbull was in that most recent conversation. And again, our administrative team meets bi-weekly, and we've recently organized into various subcommittees. And one subcommittee is focused on Mr. Powers is co-facilitating that group, along with Jeff Tomasic, around innovative uses of resources and how we can improve the budget process, communicate the budget process, and create some more efficiencies. So the total budget, that question has come up again and again, and we've received tweets and emails, etc. This table, this is a replica with different numbers, but this table was in the budget mailer last year. Just a few tables in the budget mailer last year. We received a lot of feedback on that budget mailer. Most of it was around how glossy the paper was, and not so much about the numbers, until looking at the exit feedback and the exit data from the exit poll. And then the folks who voted no, and I will say we had a smaller percentage of folks voting no than I think we've had in a while. The folks who did vote no, the majority of them voted no because of a percentage increase in administration. If I'm not mistaken, Margaret, was around 8% increase last year. And we're going to talk in a second about what constitutes administration. But that 8% number, according to the exit data, forced folks to say no to the budget. You'll see this is what the budget bill is going to look like this year. It's going to be the same table. We're still going back and forth about how glossy the paper is going to be. But we're going to have information like this in there. And we'll have where the dollars are and what area of the budget. So you'll see we talked at the last meeting about instructional improvements, and the majority of our new dollars and the increases are in our program offerings, in instructional and in the classrooms. You'll see that's a 6.3% increase from year to year. And you'll also see some decreases in the total number of dollars for administration, and decreases obviously for capital improvement. And you'll see the overall budget going up 2.5% from year to year, which is the smallest increase year to year that we've enjoyed in quite some time. So here's that pie chart that may or may not appear in the budget again. Oh, let me go back to that one. That was quick. Can't. That's okay. So you'll see this a similar chart to what we shared last year. What's different is instead of 65% in instruction, this year the budget is saying 70% of the budget is in instruction. And a decrease in operations and maintenance from, I believe, it was 8% last year to 5%. So the new dollars, again, are going to classrooms and into instruction. Administration. Those are the things, by line, that constitutes administration. Administration just isn't the executive team or principals. It's principals, other administrators throughout the district. It includes the Board of Education costs, which aren't much, but everything from the technology tools that we use to our to the organizations that we subscribe to.
Our salaries, right?
I didn't know that. I see it coming, right? And not the salaries. Business services, the business services office is there, legal services, attorney fees, human resource, everything from advertising to bringing folks in and having the interviews and providing them lunches when we're interviewing throughout the day. Both these costs are in administration, data processing, which and Mr. Moon isn't here right now, but at one point I think he shared with me that we tripled our costs in data processing just because of the number of tests that we're being asked to give by our
Not asked to give, mandated to give. It's a different item.
Yeah, after the southern thing, but I like what you said it too. And our PD efforts and Summer Institute, other things are a part of administration costs as well. So administration costs they span over many budget lines or line items in our particular budget, not just the folks who are in this building and their salaries. Other questions, tweaks that have come? Oh, this was a hot one. Increases to athletics.
Yeah.
Obviously, that whenever you say athletics or music programs, people want to know more about them. And we said at the last meeting that this budget was going to see some increases or additional support for our co-curricular opportunities. So what is that looking like? For athletic teams, we increased the line item for athletic supplies. That needs to happen. Everything from baseball and batting tees to hats. Modified uniforms. We now are looking to purchase uniforms for our modified teams. Operating expenses, what we're paying officials has gone up over the past few years, and the number of officials we are needing for games, we've had to see a minor increase there. Post medicine supplies for the new wellness center and video editing software. We know excellent athletic programs at the high school level have that video editing software. I think it's costing us about $3,200. It's allowing our coaches and our athletic director to put together tapes to send to colleges to promote our potential Division I, Division II, and Division III athletes, and hopefully get them scholarships. Other things associated with athletics, the Wellness Center. We added some lines. We didn't have this in our budget before. We now have a line item for supporting that beautiful facilities that includes everything from the tape and supplies that the athletic trainers need to the trainers that are on staff as early as 5:30, 5:45 in the morning, working all of our teams out, and we'll be there in the summer as well. Other questions? Oh, this one here. Every school, someone from every school contacted me about this, but Fall Creek, which is on Twitter, actually sent it to me as a tweet. They want to know about game-based learning and when it's coming to them. They were excited about it. So I wanted to go back to why game-based learning. This was a conversation that we had over the past year about this approach to teaching and learning that will be supplemental in ways to help our young people and educators. And it goes to our teaching and learning framework. Differently than other technology initiatives I've been a part of, and most districts I would say, we've defined good teaching and learning first. In our teaching and learning framework, if you read it, you'll see these words often. I will say to you, these words mimic and almost identically, when you look at the research and the articles that are out there on game-based learning, you're seeing the same words. So the words that are in our teaching and learning framework that we say we value and we want to see happening in every classroom are also the same words used to describe and promote and speak to game-based learning. That's why we did it. It wasn't just some cool tool. We did it because it supports our work. And even the word failure. We're going to bring in one of the international experts around grit and perseverance. When people are talking about college and career readiness now, they're talking about his work. He talks about how we need to set up situations for our young people to fail in some instances in order to achieve. Games do that very well, especially the games that are available today. This is a slide from the presentation that the folks from Bell Sherman gave months ago. And these are the words that they use to describe the initiative and the pilot. Results. There were different results that they shared before. They have new results now. They're enjoying some really high rates of young people reading above grade level at a rate that they hadn't seen before. And they're attributing most of that success to the wonderful educators in the room and because our young people are engaged in a program that they think is meeting their needs. Shifting on, here's another one from Lee Genenthal. And this came in from through a phone call and many emails. Instructional coaching. What specifically will instructional coaching look like? They've heard us speak about it and talk about it for a year. They know that there's a design team that's meeting often. So what can we share right now about instructional coaching? Again, going back to this one page about what it is that we do, our plate that's so full, I'll point to human capital and how our human capital efforts include job-embedded PD. And this is a definition that The design team has looked at often. This is the definition that's pretty much consistent in all research about instructional coaching, and it speaks to the continuous improvement effort, continuous cycle of inquiry to improve teacher capacity, to improve student learning. A model that we know will increase achievement for young people. What's embedded in the budget for next year? About 8 FTE. One FTE is going to be a master educator. That's going to be a building-based administrator of sorts. That's going to be going to have some supervisory responsibilities over the coaches, but also doing some coaching. 4 instructional coaches at the elementary level, and 3 at the secondary level. We're hoping to focus primarily on the middle schools. That is a recommendation that has come from the design team and folks working there, and is one that I'm putting in front of you as part of the instructional coaching model. We know that these FTEs, and as I said at the last meeting, we're able to do because of some efficiencies we found FTEs in other places. This is my favorite guy. He's on the Superintendent Advisory Council. And the questions he had were, when is the Total Hall going to happen? And so we have a date now. Thank you, Danielle. The Total Hall, April 24th. We'll have a community-wide conference call. Folks will have an opportunity to call in, hear the discussion, actually call in, get into the queue to ask a question of the board and I and staff, and just be a part of an hour-long conversation about budget and continuous improvement processes here in the City School District. The budget hearing, we're going to settle on a date soon, some point between May 7th and 14th, or did we stop? May 14th, I apologize. May 14th, the board meeting on the 14th, prior to the board meeting on the 14th. And May 21st will be the budget vote. Again, I just wanted to address some of the questions that were coming in most often, and some of the questions that you had at the last meeting. Myself and staff are here to answer, without any funny and fancy transition, Mr. Peacock. We're here to answer any questions.
It actually worked.
You ready for fun work before you sit down? I think we have Mr. Landau here, Mr. Trouble. Mr. Moon is back with us. How you doing? All right. That was it for me.
So, very good, Dr. Rock. Questions for the group?
Can I just, I know that in years past, and Judy raised this last time, is we actually had a line item budget that was presented to us. And could you just talk a little bit about, well, I saw Jared probably 6 months ago working on submitting documents that detailed, particular line items, and he basically had to create this thing, and it was a spreadsheet, Jared, that you were working on. It was actually during the basketball game, we were sitting there. And could you just talk about that process that Jared was going through, but also other building leaders and department heads were doing to get these numbers, but just give us a little background.
Will do, and I can speak more to the department leaders and administration in this bill. But Margaret, could you speak to what you sent to building level principals and what you asked them to submit?
Certainly, and what you saw Mr. Powers working on so diligently is the beginning of the process. And that starts in, I think they went out in mid-November. And they went out to every building principal, every budget maker, we call them, but it'd be directors, anybody that has a portion of the budget. And they have a certain amount of time to put in what their needs are, and then electronically submit it back to the business office, and then we compile it into what you then saw as that printout. And it is a process that takes a couple months. And then, there's talking, well, this looks a little different than it did last year. Just double checking to make sure everybody has in their portion of the budget what it was they really intended. So there's a lot of discussion that goes on back and forth after they're sent to the business office, and the numbers go into the computer system, and a shell of a budget is developed. And then when things look a little different, that's when we'll go back to someone like Mr. Powers and say, this looks a little different than it did. And sometimes it'll be, yeah, I know, that's exactly what I intended to, and then it might be, oh no. But that's what then becomes, all that detail is consolidated into those budget lines that you're used to.
And that's how we get the big, and now we're looking at it kind of from a bird's eye point of view.
Correct.
We're looking at the percentage increase, but it derives from all the work done.
Right, thousands of pages.
How many people are submitting, the work that Jared did in the district? you have a
I'd say
sense? Not
Probably
exactly.
25,
Okay.
yeah, that's my guess.
Even I had to do one for my office.
Yes, you
I
did.
hate those kind of details. but-
Ask who the last person was to submit theirs.
Yeah.
Tim,
Oh, no, he's Johnny on the spot.
he was too busy working on this fancy slideshow.
Yeah.
But then line by line, just the Dropbox.
You know, he's doing the video that came out.
It wasn't under tonight's meeting.
Thank you,
I
Mark.
just want to make sure you saw it.
Fancy.
Yeah, no, so.
Go, Sean.
I'm seeing here and seeing that my friend Judy here has a line item version. I'm wondering if that can be put in Dropbox for us at some point in
It was
time.
put in a week ago.
Yeah.
He
I can't, I don't see it, and I haven't seen it, so if someone can email it to me, that'd be great. Sorry. It's there, I'll look for it.
Let's see.
I am unable to view the file, but I do see it in my Dropbox. But it's always helpful if we get a heads up where docs are being dumped in the box. It's for
I
those of
think you
us.
had a,
I sent an email.
yeah, it was an email.
I didn't see the email, frankly,
That's great. We'll take a look.
but that's great.
It's only sent to the specific people that didn't play on the basketball team.
Going back to the basketball thing again, huh, Judy? Well, Judy, if you got game, Judy, I mean,
I got games.
All right.
but but I think we do need to make the point. The Albany is close to passing their budget, but not yet. Probably Thursday. We thought perhaps they would have our numbers by this meeting. There was some talk that they were going to get there, but with holiday schedules for the various denominations and when Passover and Good Friday and everything else.
What do we hear that, what did you say, Mayor, that we expect the Senate to vote at midnight tomorrow?
It's aging now, as we speak. It has to age for 3 days.
Yeah, 3 days.
And 3 days is up around midnight tomorrow night, and it'll be feverish activity.
It's called aging.
It's going to age 3 days. Do we expect, when do they expect the Assembly then to vote?
They expect both, I believe, to take care of it on Thursday.
Okay.
Well, we're looking at
Barring any,
probably
So we wouldn't see state aid runs until...
We should see them right now. They just were released on Twitter 23 minutes ago.
what they
Really?
release though. What,
Are they on the state website?
A link to the, if you were on Twitter, you would see the link to,
All right.
to the state aid runs, most recent state aid runs that just came through. So we have.
the point being that it's likely that there will be an amount of state aid, whether it's the gap elimination adjustment amount or foundation aid, but probably the gap elimination adjustment amount will be added to, which is. It's adding to a negative, so it's less of a negative. And Margaret, we don't talk about the GEA a lot, but we should mention again. I guess this is the 4th year. Is this the 4th year? This is the 4th year that the state makes their runs, does their calculations of what the state aid to each district is, and then they subtract. For us, when I looked at the other run, it was about $4.4 million at the end of their calculation. It's not to help our budget, it is to help the state's budget. So that is they do the state aid calculation and then they pull money back. And so we've been dealing with that over the last 4 years in the best way that we could, balancing an increased local share, the tax levy increasing, the tax rate increasing, hopefully in a moderate way, but also using reserves and doing other budget work over the years. And we've reduced our workforce somewhat. And we did cut jobs, Dr. Brown. We did a retirement incentive 3 years in a row. For those employees that were toward the end of their career, and it was an incentive for them to go ahead and retire. Unfortunately, losing a lot of great experienced teachers in the district, but that means we get a lot of great younger teachers that are coming on, and so that resets our salary levels, and we've been able to put a budget together, hopefully in a fairly successful way, maintaining programming, maintaining really the best programming in probably Central New York is what we have available in the Ithaca City School District. So I'm killing time here, Dr. Brown. Questions? So, but we will get that final aid run probably in the next few days. Once Margaret has a chance to look at it.
Remember when you go and look at it, that they always overestimate our BOCES aid and our transportation aid.
Right.
So don't go to the bank on the number on the state aid run. For whatever reason, it's always more than we will ever get in those two categories.
So what percentage would be about half?
I have no idea. I mean, the last that I read in the Times, and I'm only talking about what I read in the Times.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they're talking about $300 million more in state aid than the governor's budget, but it's going to be a portion of it in foundation aid and a portion of it in reduction in GEA, gap eliminations. So I don't know, where we'll be on that kind of a number, because the GEA is heavily based on your wealth index.
Right.
Whereas aid, the foundation aid is, it's based on it. What they've typically done is it's gone up 1% or it's gone up 2% or whatever, and you're able to figure that pretty easily. But the GEA is more difficult to guesstimate where you're going to come out. And they're talking about splitting the money between the two categories. So
So another great $5.
It's going to be, it's $300 million. If it's that much, it'll be some money. It won't.
At the end result is our state aid, that amount that we received this year will be larger than what we received last year, I believe.
Right.
That is different than what we saw a few years ago when we had fairly dramatic cuts in state aid. Well, frankly, the first gap elimination adjustment was
a cut.
Was $5 million or whatever it was. So it's I hate to think. I don't like to think about that.
Yeah.
So. But as part of the deal, Margaret, there are going to be proposals that we could level out some of our payments to ERS, the retirement systems.
Right, and it looks a little different than what the governor proposed, but the concept's the same. It doesn't run it out. He wanted to run it out 25 years, but this is 7 years, 5 years. It depends on whether it's a state retirement system or teacher's retirement system.
Yeah, teachers in ERS are going to be treated differently, I saw.
Right.
Just to make it more complicated.
And you've got to pay it back. There's a payback provision in it, too. It still doesn't appear to be anything that most districts are going to go for.
Right.
It still has to be approved by the controller for ERS and the teacher's retirement system for TRS.
Right, and Margaret, I'm not sure whether you have the basic numbers, but we just really need to just tell folks that, okay, here are the numbers, and we're probably really not going to consider that, but we at least need to have the information about what that program is. It probably would not be our long-term advantage to do that. Maybe a short-term gain for a long-term pain, but I don't want to step on it.
Right. When there's more information on it, it'll be a little easier to run the numbers.
And is that a question that you have to answer before you pass the budget?
No.
Obviously you do, or not?
No, because I believe that one of the houses was even going to put it off and have it effective in the next year, not the current.
I think that was the ERS.
Yes, yeah, it's like you said, they're treating them differently.
Yeah, they're treating them differently, so that was going to be even off another year.
Yeah, and it'll probably take that much time just to get the controller's office to make their decision and TRS to make their decision.
In other words, it may not be a worthwhile discussion for the 13-14 budget year. We may not have enough information in time to make a decent decision.
That's right.
I did just want to point it out. I was just trying to bring up decision points that the board and districts may have to make a decision at a certain point in time. If if it's really not something we need to be concerned about immediately, it's not going to go to that budget vote. Judy was asking about, okay, when are we going to vote on the budget? We certainly are waiting until we get our final numbers from the state. Dr. Brown, what do we do at that point?
What do we do with these final numbers?
Well, once we hear from the state, what's the plan?
Well, the budget we propose will meet the needs of our learners. So any additional revenue, if that's what you're asking about, we're proposing goes into fund balance or into reserves.
Are we at the point where we want to adopt the budget tonight?
That would be nice. It would give staff enough time to pull together the various documents, start working on the publication, start working with other staff about what it would look like if approved. So, yes, the more time we are allowed, the better we.
When do we have to adopt it by?
Where it was on that calendar. It's mid-April. I think it was your second board meeting in April. It had to be, but you know, it's
like the 26th or something, is it? No, this is the 26th.
That may not even be right. It might be.
I believe it's the 23rd, second meeting.
23rd is the second meeting.
16. And you have to do it before then, so we need one more meeting.
This is the district must complete the budget 7 days before the public hearing, which would be
right, but then there's some other reporting requirements that preclude that, even where you have to have information to the state education department.
Adopting tonight, I think, would be consistent with what we did last year, correct, Margaret?
I think it'd be 1 week earlier.
1 week earlier.
I probably will have to abstain because I don't know much.
And yeah, and I think this is one of those things that I'd like to have officially on the agenda, knowing beforehand, so I can take a look at some additional information. At the moment, everything looks good. I think the process has been a year-long process. We've been having multiple committee meetings. That part I understand. I think we can give the tentative nod to the staff and faculty to go ahead and proceed with the sort of official adoption. I still want to look at this last document with the line items before I will be able to cast a vote myself.
I frankly did not have an inclination that I'd be voting on the budget tonight, not on the agenda. I had not seen the line item. I had not seen it in the Dropbox.
So can we put it on as a resolution for the next meeting?
That sounds like a good idea.
I think that's what we're trying to get to is the timing, and so everyone can be ready.
And at the moment, are we suggesting the staff put it on at the 110,701 number?
2.5.
2.5. Just to give you...
Right, exactly. Again, trying to go for that top line number. That's, regardless of what Albany does, that's not going to change. And Dr. Brown, you've said several times that is the number that you need to, well, the district needs to meet the programming needs of the children of the district.
And in no way am I trying to rush the adoption. I just saw a window there. I was trying to slide through like I typically do. We can wait.
Yeah. It was well played.
So, Michael, go ahead.
The line by line that's in your Dropbox, is that something that might be in the public Dropbox as well, or is that not public yet?
I don't.
It will be.
It's not even yet.
I haven't seen it yet, so the public and we're right on the same page, right? Me and Sean, we haven't seen it, so. Any other questions?
See that.
And again, let me know if there are questions, specific questions that you wish for us to address at the next meeting. We'd be happy to do that as well.
And there is Brad, when's the next finance meeting?
We've got one on the 8th, but that's for the energy performance contracts. We've kind of got a couple of hours work already lined up that evening.
Right, I'm looking at April 22nd.
That'll be too late.
That's too late.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's not going to be a regular finance meeting before we adopt the budget. So I guess we just need to know whether there's. Basically, what I'm asking is, does the board need does the board need a finance committee meeting before the next public meeting to review line items, et cetera, to go down through it, to ask questions from
Can I just
staff, et cetera.
First ask a question. I found I think it's a line item document in here. It's about 8 pages.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, it's just what we had last year. It's almost the same, exact same format.
Okay.
Here it says, though,
To answer your question, Rob, I don't know if we need another one. I can make myself available if our fearless chair wants to try to coordinate our schedules, which has been a headache to do. But if it's worthwhile and we think it's necessary, by all means, I can meet the Thursday before that Tuesday board meeting, or I can send Brad a couple of times so we can try to schedule a finance and facilities committee.
I was just trying to get a feel from the board.
When's the next board meeting?
I'd like it.
So we have to be before the 9th?
And I think Judy brings up a good point, and I have not looked at that essentially a budget document line by line, and I think the committee format is very good to go through it that way.
April 4th.
And Judy, I think I share your desire to do that, and that's a place where any and all can show up. Public meeting.
5:30 on April 4th, Thursday.
Good for me.
Does that work?
Mr. Harris?
Mr. Harris?
It's Thursday, April 4th, say at 5:30, I think is what works for you, John?
Yeah, yes. Actually, I can do any time. I teach Monday, Wednesday, Fridays.
Do it at 5?
I can do it at 5.
5 o'clock. Later that day?
Yes.
Yeah, you better at 6 or 6:30?
Pizza? Wing?
He's trying to bribe us with pizza and wings.
He's sure.
Is Elder Pine?
6 or 6:30?
6:30 on April 4th.
That's okay.
Margie, you said you were out of town.
I am. I'm not.
Maybe send Angela if that's possible. We'll go to
I'll check and see.
we'll go to the bullpen and
Yeah.
bring the lefty or
Yeah.
I'll be there.
he'll be there.
Sit down.
It's 6:30?
6:30.
Thursday, April 4th. Correct.
And obvious open to
Anybody?
any and all. We can have it in this room if we have a big group or whatever.
I mean, announce it for conference room A, but
Yeah, you can always adjust.
move it here if we get too big a group.
All right. Again, just trying to make sure that any questions, concerns, inquiries are met and hopefully answered as we prepare to vote on April. What's the dates?
9th.
On April 9th, we do expect to vote on the full budget at that point and adopt. So this is an opportunity over the next 2 weeks to go ahead and dig through it a little bit more. But sorry folks, we do feel like we've been digging through this for the last 4 years basically. So this is a multi-year process that we really engage in. But we want to make sure that everyone's comfortable as we can be on $110 million, but and 35 cents. Go ahead, Albert.
I'd like to see that stacked up one day. I'd still like to get a handle on the AIS, special ed transition. We could do some work in that meeting on that. That would be great. What did that office currently look like? Budget items, how have they been dispersed? How have they been spread throughout the district to get the return? And you may, the instructional coach may even be a part of that, but I still feel a little fuzzy on where that went.
Yeah. I'm a little fuzzy on the request. I just want to make sure I'm hearing it. AIS services and
The
other
redistribution of administrators in this building and at the high school. I want to look into that a little more and figure out how we rearrange that. How do we accommodate the need?
Just at the high school, or are you looking?
District-wide.
Is your question? District-wide.
District-wide.
Okay.
Well, that's a district-wide position, so.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I can make it work.
Okay. Pat, you okay?
I'm fine. I will not be able to make that Facilities and Finance meeting, for which I apologize.
Oh no, that's just another opportunity to look into it. But if we're good,
Be in everything.
yeah, exactly.
I got a hotwire reservation for pre-K. I gotta go.
Gotta go.
I don't know. Are we good? Jay, you good? You need anything? Jay's good. Dr. Brown, I think we're basically set with what we need to do over the next few weeks regarding our budget. And you know, I think if we could, we're going to go on to policies. Sean.
Sure. Two things about policy. One, in the 2000 series, there's a policy 2140, which identifies a process for board adoption, revision, and/or policy review. I've tried to explain last time, there's been a little bit of confusion in terms of how we've done policy. It's always made me a little uncomfortable. So the past couple weeks I've been going through and seeing how other districts have been doing it and trying to look out of state. And as a matter of process moving forward, what I'd like to recommend to the board is what we may want to do and begin with today. That we sort of return to a 2-reading process, but after each reading there is no tabling, that you actually vote. That the policy gets voted on the first reading. If it doesn't pass, then the policy is effectively, or the revision is effectively dead. If it passes, then it goes on to a second reading with any modifications, discussions, conversation. For a second reading, it gets voted on again. So rather than tabling, that we would actually vote to pass a first reading, though it would not go into effect until after the second reading. There could be a provision, according to a couple things I've seen, that if there was an urgent need to pass a policy in a first reading, that we would do so with either a supermajority or 2/3 vote, with an explicit stipulation and motion to identify that it was being done on a first reading. So it would require a 2-part process. But that's the idea behind it. For part of the policy review, we'll get there in the 2000 series, but if you notice on the agenda, it's also the reason why I requested that these policies be listed as a first reading, that we actually start officially following that policy. Gives our board members a chance to sort of make sure they ask any questions, gives our community a chance to sort of look at any policies, and to make sure that we're doing this as a process that engages the community and it's not, that we have a full opportunity to hear from all parties involved. So I don't know if there's any quick reaction to that idea. That suggestion will be coming your way shortly. For my policy committee members, it's already in the policy Dropbox. I've already written that policy. You can take a look at it. But it'll be coming our way soon.
Sean, I was too busy sneezing. Could you give me that again? We're reading the first, we're doing the first reading, and then if there's changes, we bring it back for, if there are requested changes, we bring it back for a second.
All policies will go through 2 readings. The first reading is a chance for us to have discussion, debate, and make any modifications. At the end of that conversation, we'll vote on each policy for a first reading. If a policy passes the first reading, it will be placed on the subsequent agenda meeting for the next voting meeting and voted on as a second reading. And after a second reading, it will become official policy, be enacted immediately upon the vote. If it does not pass the first reading, the policy is gone. The revision is gone.
So the resolution for a first reading is a resolution to bring it to a second reading.
In essence.
And adoption.
Right, but without tabling it or anything, right? That there'd actually be a motion that we would affirmatively accept the first reading in preparation or for our second reading. Mm-hmm. But we'd act on each policy each time we before us.
So, do you have some reactions to that? My first reaction is, there's typically discussion at the first reading or misunderstanding or education for people not on the policy committee who haven't heard the policy before, and it takes kind of the first reading to get your mind kick-started when you've not been wrestling with that issue.
Yes.
So I'd be concerned that process has us kind of pull the trigger in the first view of it for many of us, and then also what I noticed happens sometimes when it's brought to the full board is someone will ask a question, hey, what about this? And then sometimes there's a policy meeting in between, and then we'll go back. And so I was just wondering how those kind of things would affect it when we're actually taking action early as opposed to the later.
Well, one of the reasons that we're trying to find a process that we're not doing. We're not always going to be doing 17 or, as Rob has known, 38 pages of policy in an evening. So we're really doing this for policy at a time, but we're finding ourselves in a different process as we revamp the entire policy book. So to answer your first question is, I don't see that as having a different impact. We're trying to have folks read policies in advance as well. So some of this conversation actually have to happen, obviously, during the board meeting, but I still expect it to take place, and that we wouldn't be, if we vote affirmative for a first reading, we're not voting saying that we identify that we agree with that policy. We're saying we're okaying for it to be, for a first reading to be preparation for a second reading. So there's still plenty of opportunity for us to engage in those debates, make changes, edits, fact find, get more information, etc. That'd still be the idea. But I would dare say what we've been doing by tabling. One, we've been tabling out of order, and we've been pulling things off the table, I think,
right?
So, in ways that it got a little funky for a little bit, and this way it makes it just a very clean process. If a policy passes the first reading, it's on to the second reading, with whatever noted changes, conversations, discussions we make as a collective body.
So you said if it doesn't pass the first reading, it's dead?
No, that's a mischaracterization. If it doesn't pass the first reading, when we come to this policy, we'll have to decide what takes place. So, for example, there's 3 policies currently being reviewed tonight that we've never adopted because they never passed, but we don't know what the stipulation is. Should a policy fail? Should we put some sort of 6 months, supermajority vote, whatever? I don't know which way to bring it back off on the table is, and we haven't had that conversation in the policy committee. What I'm just trying to get us to focus on for the first time being is that every policy would go through a first and second reading, and we could decide what the nuance looks like should a policy not make it past the first reading.
And I did go to the last policy committee meeting, and I was uncomfortable with, passing a basket of policies. Okay, we're going to pass the 1,000 series, all in favor. I frankly didn't feel it really respected the work that went into it. I'm in a policy committee, and I'm seeing essentially the whole leadership team there, and multiple, well, at least the committee plus other board members, and really that doesn't really respect that process at all, and it just never felt quite right to me.
And it didn't feel right to me either, Rob. I think the issue is trying to balance our time constraints, given the fact that we're doing a full policy review, with keeping it moving as well. But you're right, in the grand scheme of things, each policy warrants individual attention. And so the decision was that we would go through each policy one by one. When and where there's conversation discussion, we'll have that. When there's not, we'll vote to accept the first review or reading or second reading.
But there is I certainly am okay with the process. There is no policy will be given a one-time look and then pass in as policy of the district. All policies would be seen twice. Unless
there are extenuating circumstances, or we deem for safety of children, or whatever the case may be, that that's necessary. And I would recommend at that point in time, with the conversation, but a 2/3 supermajority vote to make that happen.
And it's been a big job to take on, essentially revisiting, redoing the entire policy book, which I've stated several times is a huge job that Sean and the committee has taken on. And but again, I think we're just going to have to crank down through and just go policy by policy.
That is correct. We are in it. So, with that basic understanding, can we proceed with that? All the policies we're reviewing today are on the agenda for a first reading, and that we can move them and then discuss them.
With that.
Fantastic.
That's correct.
So, with that being said, I move policy 1000, community relation goals, to be adopted as presented.
I second it.
Second myself.
I'm trying not to laugh.
That's the part I'm uncomfortable with. You've moved to adopt it. You have not moved to take it to a second reading.
So then I will withdraw that if at all possible, or clarify my motion.
Okay.
That I move that we
first reading.
Right.
So we have our first reading and move it to a second
reading. Fantastic. Okay. Thank you for the language, Brett.
I would say move it to a second reading and adoption at that time.
Sure.
That's consistent language.
Yeah, that language.
Right. Move policy 1000 to a second reading and adoption at the time.
I feel like I'm on the same.
Do you have the language, Danielle?
Yes.
Frightening.
Okay.
Discussion. Oh, sorry, Rob.
No. Sean, go ahead. This is your baby.
Not really.
Just for clarification, you're doing a second reading and adoption at the next meeting?
So it's when the vote passes, when the policy gets voted on the second reading, it's then adopted, that adoption date for a second reading.
Tonight, are these second readings?
These are all first readings. For that very reason, to make sure we have clarity and we have time for people to spend some time.
I was ready.
Can I ask one more question regarding process?
Please.
So when we do move it for that second reading, does that second reading have to be the next meeting?
That's the way in which it's written, but we can have that conversation and we can decide what that means. That policy has not been passed yet, so we are still...
Right, I'm just, again, just as we schedule.
That's sort of been the pro forma that the next voting meeting that policy would show up on the agenda.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that, I just want to be clear.
And there'll be a time when we're not having 16 policies to go through, there'll be 1 or 2.
Yep.
There won't be any time the next year, but there'll be a time. Any questions or conversation about policy 1000? I do have a single recommendation if I can add. Number 3 and number 10 seem to be redundant to me. Number 3 is to understand the community attitudes and aspirations for the school. Number 10 is to ascertain the community's opinions and desires with respect to the operation of the school system and incorporate the knowledge into its actions. I'm not sure if we need both of them. I would recommend that we delete one and keep the other, and I have no preference.
Get rid of 3.
Yeah, get rid of 3. 10 is more inclusive.
10 seems better.
Yes.
So we can...
I mean, the number 10 of them seems better than 11.
So, Tanya, you've made that type?
Yeah.
Bullet point 3 is deleted.
All right. Any other edits? If not, all in favor of moving to a second reading? That's everyone but Judy Max. Okay, everyone. Judy Max did vote, so that's everyone. Danielle, thank you, and we're moving on.
I will then move policy 1050, annual district election and budget vote for a second reading and adoption at that time.
Second.
Are there any changes here?
I don't think we have any changes.
I have a question about a change, but I'm not sure if it's necessary.
Yeah, Dr. Brown's right.
If you right when you're in the policy, you should have had all of them documents.
Yeah, all of it, just the PDF.
Turn off Wi-Fi.
I found mine.
Sure, it's not.
So if you go to Dropbox, if you actually go back there.
It's called settings.
It works at home.
What's it called?
Yeah, fix it with you.
If you go into policy committee,
I'm not sure everybody might drop by.
sounds good. My only question was on the second paragraph. It says the first publication of the notice shall be at least 45 days prior to the election. If we read the material that we're reading for later on in the election material, it says the publication of notice shall be at least 45 days prior to election, but no more than 49 days. I don't know if that caveat is needed in this policy, if that's the legal language or the New York State language. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about, Danielle?
Which paragraph are you reading?
Second paragraph.
Of which policy?
Of policy 1050. There's a...
yeah, just notice the time.
There
we go. What paragraph?
Second paragraph.
Is your clerk?
Which are you questioning?
I'm not, where it says the middle of the paragraph, the first publication of the notice shall be at least 45 days prior to the election, but and according to the other law we're reading, but no sooner than 49 days is what it says.
Yeah.
So there's a 4-day window. And so should the policy also reflect what the law says to us?
I would imagine it should, yes.
And you know what I'm referring to when I say that, correct?
I do.
And beyond that, that policy was good.
So we have to add 49 days to that sentence?
At least 45, but not more than...
Not sooner than 49.
Okay.
No.
But if it's a weekly newspaper and it's not published in that 5-day window...
Yeah, that should have to...
I found a formatting issue.
He's proud.
Really?
Paragraph 2 of propositions.
I got a whole problem with the proposition.
It says the notice of the annual election member looks like a
Where
return.
are you, Mr. Peel, where are you referring to?
Paragraph 2, I guess, I don't know if it's...
You're looking at policy 1050, annual district election budget vote?
Yeah.
Under propositions, if you bring the text down a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bulleted to. I
Little
think
further
this
down.
might be the way it's in our Dropbox. Because it's formatting all right up there.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I think
It's the way it came into Dropbox.
So you can't trust your electronic device.
Am I-
Project.
So Sean, I don't know what, this idea of propositions is somewhat frightening to me about how, so I don't know where this wording has come from.
It's right out of state.
I don't,
So the state ed law book.
it is.
It's copying the state ed law book.
Yeah, most of this whole policy is out of
I don't know if that, well, it doesn't make me feel any better, but I don't know that we have to, this seems, there's detail, but there's a lot of things missing here. I don't quite get it.
So it causes me some concern as well, especially things like 100 signatures, and you can add things onto the budget or onto the election or the ballot within 30 days or whatever.
Exactly.
So I guess the question would be from this policy, I'm more than happy, if we want to sort of move on to a second reading, we can finally answer those questions and make sure that we bring those to have that answered, because there's some questions I have there as well. So that's something we could definitely...
In fact, it seems relative, if you bring up some hot button issue that...
Yeah.
Especially the 30 days prior
Read
to
number
the election.
4, though, Jay. Read number 4. You got to read it in its entirety.
I don't know what that means, because I don't know what the legal requirements are.
Well, if you're a small city school district, you can't have a line item that's not in the total budget, so it doesn't comply. I mean, it's that sort of thing. It really the fourth paragraph takes away 99% of what's given in the first 2 paragraphs.
Because because we're a small city school district, that what? You can't.
What you're worried about is somebody's going to bring a petition to add a line item.
We have to do
But number 4, or delete it. But number 4 will tell you that the wording of the petition must comply with all legal requirements.
Right.
And if it does not comply, it may be changed or altered by the board, or the board may reject it.
And how does it not comply?
If it's not part of the budget if it's not in compliance with the state ed law, then you don't have to adopt it. You don't have to take the proposition forward. I remember having this discussion once before. I don't know why we had it.
Fairly recent. Well, this was a few years ago. We had
2 years ago.
I do remember having the discussion.
Yeah, we had a discussion, and in the end, we ended up leaving the language because the language was, I thought, right out of the state education law.
So basically, there was some talk that the proposition was going to be on that was going to direct us to do something that we had to do by state law. I mean, the law was going to override anything that a petition proposition may do. So it was invalid.
So suppose we decide to fund an after-school. It's in the budget to fund an after-school program.
Okay.
Or to defund an after-school program. And 100 people sign the petition, and they draw up the wording, and you're saying they can't...
If it doesn't fit within the tax levy, then it doesn't comply with the law.
How does it not fit within the tax levy?
If they're adding money to a budget that's already been proposed.
Suppose they want to delete some, you get 100 people who don't want us to fund something that we're funding.
Jay, I think we should not speculate on what can and can't be done. I'd rather discuss what the law requires and defer the conversation to then. Because you and I read it very differently. That you've got to have a very tightly drawn petition that meets a bunch of requirements that'll typically be too difficult, or they'll deliver it too late to get it done. And you can then alter it, change it, alter it, or reject it. And so I see it I'd rather get, if we need BS&K to talk to us about this, do that, rather than us sit here and speculate as to what may or may not be possible.
I want more information.
Yeah.
And just another additional thing is the board may also on its own motion submit propositions. That seems pretty...
and we are.
We already have 2 on the ballot for this year, so...
Yeah.
And
in addition to...
We already are.
Can we have propositions to not allow dogs on the, you know, I don't know, is a proposition only about money?
That's a good question, and what I think, I'm going to try to take Brad's advice and try to...
rather than speculate.
Right, go BCK. I also want to just point out, after number 4, it clearly says, well, that the board shall not be required to place any proposition on the ballot which is within the exclusive province of the board. So it does find ways to constantly limit and restrict this, but let's get some, we'll get some feedback from BS&K and go from there.
Okay. So we're gonna, any other questions regarding this policy? We'll go ahead and all in favor of the motion on the floor. That's everyone. So we'll move on.
I move that policy 1120, school district records, be moved for a second reading and adopted at that time.
Second.
Thanks, Judy. Questions, anyone? No questions? I guess we'll call that motion. You okay, Judy?
Yep.
Okay. All in favor? That's everyone. We'll move on.
And my apologies, I didn't think of this before, I forgot. There was also 1120R that went along with 1120. And there was a couple questions that I had. Actually, there was no questions I had. Yes, there was one question I had. In terms of the records access officer that is designated by the superintendent, I imagine.
Shall be the school business.
Yes. So, but if you look at number 2, definition of records, right there. So Roman number 2, the records access officer will have responsibility for compiling and maintaining the following records. Currently, the records access officer has been identified as the school business administrator. And we're saying the school business administrator would then also be a record of the final vote of each board member on any preceding matter of which the member votes. A record setting forth the name, school, offices, address, title, salary, etc. of salary of each employee in the district, and a reasonable detailed current list of subject matter of all records in possession of the district. I don't know what to do about those, if they're legally required to have, to make sense, but it seems to me an interesting role for the person to record board votes and a list of salaries and a list of all records that we may have on file. And I don't know what to do with that. It was just a question I had for the group. And I thought the board clerk's responsibility was to record the final vote of all board members. And so I didn't know how to proceed there. And if that's only my question, I'm happy to work with the policy committee meeting.
It's an interesting.
Well, actually, our human resources department's doing more of the salaries and titles.
That's what I was wondering. Do we change the definition?
That does solve things if we do it that way. We can check on the legality of that. But to say the superintendent's designee
will have the responsibility, et cetera, et cetera.
So, if we solve that one, the definition of records, paragraph 1, I'm not sure if that limits us to records that we physically have here in the district, and I'm not sure whether we're storing things in BOCEs or in the cloud or in Dropbox or in, because it says physical forms whatsoever, and then on the bottom it says microfilms, computer tapes, or discs. So I'm not sure what other language we need to put in there to cover stuff that's stored off-site or on some server somewhere that we don't own. If that's even happening, I imagine it is, because everyone else is doing that. But
more and more is electronic now. We still have all the old Like student record files.
Yeah. But how long do you have to keep?
So the recommendation moving forward would be to do what? To contact, to work with BSNK as well on this one?
No, just, I guess, first establish that if we are storing things in the, maybe it's a Tim Moon thing, just if we're storing information, see it says for the district in any physical form whatsoever. So if we're using a server someplace, you know, the class, yeah, like what is our email? That's perfect. Is our email stored off-site, or is it here, or do we have, you know, that's, I just don't know how we're storing that. So maybe Tim can give us some language to make sure.
Everything is internal right now.
Well, what about, I mean, we're
dealing with
Dropbox,
yeah.
that's not.
Well, by internal you mean here at the rack.
Yes. So our servers.
Or the rack, excuse me.
We have our servers, but there are more and more cloud-based apps, i.e. Dropbox, which we're using.
What about BOCES, our finance
That's
folks, don't they have records?
Yeah, they do.
Which actually our service budget is essential.
So BOCES is included in ours, or?
Good question.
That's all. I just wanted Tim to give us some broad language, so at least if we're doing policy, we might as well get it.
So talk to Tim Moon, and we'll take a look at some of the other language, including the possible language of superintendent as designee. If I'm not mistaken, I think we have to actually identify an office or position, but we'll clarify that to make sure that gets done. And then the 3 bullets, questions about, or comments or suggestions about how to reconcile Roman numeral 2, number 2, A, B, and C.
I think the superintendent could designate individuals, and they could be different.
Fantastic.
So the superintendent is to designate someone responsible for A, and someone responsible for B, and someone.
You're keeping some track of these notes?
Yes.
Fantastic, Danielle. Excellent.
Thank you, Danielle. Anything else?
I should probably move 1120R school record district regulation.
I asked Judy if this has been moved yet.
I had not. I did not do it. I apologize.
Yeah, go ahead.
And that would also include 11, and I also would move, real quick, 1120E.1 and 1120E.2, which are the applications and the response to requests for records. And that's it. So 1120R, 1120E.1, and 1120E.2.
We appreciate the efficiency. It's been moved,
And
seconded by Judy.
Yeah.
Anything on the other, any E1, E2, that's fine for right now? Okay, all in favor? That's everyone? On to the next.
I'll move policy 1130, news media relations, to be, well, I'll move to a second reading and adopted at that time.
Second.
The only edit that I have so far in the first paragraph, the second sentence, it says the board and superintendent will make every reasonable effort to cooperate with media by providing accurate information in district operations to the extent permissible by statute and regulation. I would like to be a little more definitive than that and say the board superintendent will cooperate with the media by providing accurate information.
So I shouldn't make stuff up. Is that what
I don't think that that's the way in which we want to go about it, but, but that's just my suggestion on the table. Doesn't mean we have to abide by it.
Well, I think that's very valid.
Okay, you got will cooperate with the media by providing accurate information. Why can't you just say we'll provide accurate information?
Sure.
But I think there is a space for reasonable effort because of personnel.
Well, that's where, to the extent permissible by statute or any regulation, I thought took care of that. And for me, it was just the way in which the sentence read, that we're not going to make every reasonable effort to provide accurate information. I think we're trying to provide accurate information, but I could be wrong about that.
Okay.
So,
actually, there's a hair that Judy just split a hair that statute regulations has nothing to do with our internal capacity. You know, if for some reason we can't do it, or we are in a position where we just don't have the manpower to do it, then saying will puts us in an awkward position.
Great.
And if I could speak, there are many days that I receive a phone call or an email to respond to a media request, and we're inundated, especially in crisis if there is one. And if not getting back to that call, someone may hold this policy up at a meeting like this, in public comment, and say I failed to look to the policy by not returning that phone call. Not that I don't wish to.
Understand.
Yeah.
And if I may, the language of making every reasonable effort does guard against human error. That, you know, to say you gave me incorrect information. Yes, but I was making a reasonable effort to give the correct information. Not that Rob would ever give incorrect information, or Dr. Brown, but you know, others may follow in their footsteps.
I could be misinformed. You know,
exactly. So
my knowledge
I think
base.
there's a reason for the language,
Fantastic.
which is a good one.
Keep it then. Fourth paragraph, it needs to be an indentation for the board. And then the last paragraph says, if board members choose to blog or maintain a social network presence, the board member must clarify that the postings do not represent the board as a whole. And at some point in time, it just raised the question that we need to then also have a district employee-wide policy about the same idea.
Yeah.
If district employees are posting or web or blogging or whatever, that they're not speaking on behalf of the district or the board. So it doesn't mean that we're going to just say here, it just means that we'll be back to it at some point in time.
Okay. I don't understand that.
Understand what
I'll do both.
Say again?
I say I'll do both. Are you saying you're saying we should have blanket statements saying no matter what issue we're discussing, we're not speaking about? There are very few times I post anything about the board that it is a cute kid playing hockey. So I'm not really sure what that one. It seems like their expectation is we are always on social media, or when we're on social media, we will be talking about board business. That's what it seems to be getting. If I'm not talking about board business, then it's irrelevant. If I am, then the question is, one blanket statement, or do we have a line in every single message saying, this does not represent blah, 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 blah?
In many folks' profile, including superintendents, there is one line that says these tweets or this page doesn't represent the Board of Education or the school district. So that's how my colleagues have taken care of that piece.
Got it. So in the defining information about us, all of these places, we can have that line.
Blanket disclaimer.
What's that mean to do?
Exactly. No, that's exactly.
Gotta get robbed up on Facebook and all that stuff.
Are we good?
Yeah.
All in favor? That's everyone. So we'll keep moving.
Policy 1145 is a policy that we've addressed before and have adopted. I believe we've adopted, though I'm having difficulty finding the adoption date. And this is the distribution of flyers, advertising materials, and announcements policy. So I'm asking the board's opinion of how you want to proceed. Should we proceed with the same process we've been doing of a first and second reading and just get it all with an official adoption date and go from there? So then I will move policy 1145, distribution of flyers, advertising materials, and announcement policies to a second reading and adoption at that time.
Second.
It was just last fall that we had this.
Yeah.
And we,
Any changes needed?
No, we sort of went through it before.
the only change would be is that sometimes superintendent is lowercase and sometimes it's uppercase. Second paragraph, third paragraph. Those are two corrections I would make, but beyond that, no.
Okay. I would think the superintendent should always be uppercase.
I prefer it to be lowercase, but it's fine. But we'll go uppercase.
So what's your thought on this, Dr.?
I like the big S.
The big what?
I would go with whatever the board wishes.
What do you say?
The big S. The Superman.
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 No, you said it. So do you.
Anyway, so that's however you're going to do the superintendent thing. I don't have an opinion, so that's fine. All in favor? That's everyone.
I'll move policy 1230, public participation at board meetings, to a second reading and adoption at that time.
I'll second.
Chris got one in. All right.
So are we going to change our
question,
practice
Sean.
to 3 minutes?
After some conversation at the policy meeting, that's what we came up with.
Yeah.
Jay, go ahead.
So it refers to persons wishing to have matters included on the agenda shall contact the superintendent in accordance with policy 2342, agenda preparation. Any idea what that's all about?
Similar to this evening by the student presentation we had today. And there'll be a policy coming on 2342, which is about agenda preparation, that the community does have the opportunity to add things onto the board agenda.
So you can't surprise the board with a PowerPoint presentation. That's probably not going to be successful.
But what does it take to get for a person in the public to get onto the agenda?
I can refer you to policy 2342, which is the current NISBA boilerplate language, but we'll start debating that in 2-3 weeks.
In due time.
That'll be interesting.
Usually it's like 7 days notice. I mean, if I remember the policy correctly, it's things of that nature.
We have to put in the proper days.
And no, I don't think we're following our bolded language here. We got name, address, telephone number, and a brief description. I think our form just says name and name.
This is the conversation Rob and I were having, that once this gets adopted, we have to follow it, and so now it's time to have that conversation, so we can change, edit, delete any of this.
Why do we need all that? Why can't we just have people come here and sign up and speak to us?
We can. What would you like it to say?
Do we need a policy to have someone do a sign-up sheet?
As I'm sure you know, a lot of times policy is written for, sometimes policy is written for worst case scenarios. So while we might find ourselves today not having to worry about this, next year, 3 years, it may be an issue about how folks get onto the agenda, who's allowed to speak, and those sort of things. So yes, I would dare say it's probably good to have a policy to fall back on at some point in time. Now, the information that you're saying that we don't need all information requested, but I think the other part of the idea is to make sure that folks who are coming to speak to us are also current residents or taxpayers within the Ithaca City School District. Doesn't mean that's the only thing that takes place.
I think asking for an address or an email address is so you can respond to them later if you need to. I mean, some folks do come, as we've had happen occasionally. People come, they ask a question that for us was not on the agenda, out of the blue, we're unaware of, and you can't answer it here on the spot. You need to get back to them. I'm not sure asking them for an address is unreasonable.
And sometimes that question is dealt with later in the meeting, but they may not stay the whole time. They'll say their piece and then leave and not realize that we're going to go ahead and talk about that, but we're not going to respond to their comments during that public.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't think it was unreasonable. I'm just looking at the comparison of what we're doing now and
we've been changing them.
So
sign up.
Right, in the agenda right now says 2 minutes for a 30-minute period. Each person can speak for 2 minutes. I did point out, well, we'll just change that to 3 minutes. We've always been pretty liberal about time, unless we have 50 people signed up in a large meeting. We do not have a timer, and we pretty much let folks have their say, and we keep moving. But we'll change that to 3 once the policy is finally adopted.
So, and then just the board cannot and will not permit public discussion involving individual district personnel or students. Mm-hmm. So, we get Pat up there and says, hey, I'm going with Code Red Robotics with Mr. Crywee to Cleveland. Not allowed.
I don't think that's what it means.
I don't think that's the intent of what's being written here. I know that's maybe a literal.
You mean bad things? Like, I'm just looking at the words. It says you can't discuss students. So if a student, someone wants to say, hey, our swimmer won state, our policy says you cannot permit that to happen because it talks about individual student. Or do we want this language broad so we can
Well, remember the incident where we did allow it to go too far?
Recently, surprised by the topic and said, stop.
We can't,
It's, typically it's a...
No, I got it. I'm just reading what the...
So do you have a recommendation of different language that you'd like to see?
Bad things.
Well, and again, this is a policy for those who are coming to speak to the board, not board members talking.
Be it state personnel issues or litigation.
Common sense.
Well, we could say can't discuss confidential matters such as litigation personnel.
Does that address your question, concern, Mr. Peacock?
Or something like it, right?
Something like it. You gotta wordsmith that a little bit.
So the recommendation from the board is to wordsmith that sentence to have something that's reflective of, that still allows for us to have some conversations of, say, accommodations or kudos, but that prevents us from engaging in confidential and or privacy matters, personnel matters.
Work on the.
Yeah, and then generally, what's our concern with not having individuals mentioned?
Our concern is that oftentimes we'll get into issues that we shouldn't be discussing out in public.
Yeah.
I got a complaint about teacher X, and we're going to talk about it now during a public comment session, and we're not going to allow it to happen. Or student so-and-so did this to student so-and-so, what are you going to do about it? We're not going to engage in that conversation, not in public. So trying to give the leeway to make sure that those don't occur is the reason
So
why.
if bad things happen to a student, you come and say, a bad thing happened to a student, I'd like to address it to the board. You can't mention the name, you can't mention anything. Is that, I mean,
What we don't want is someone coming up and saying, Johnny did this to my child.
What are you all doing about it?
What are you all doing about Johnny? Because Johnny's a bad kid.
And the principal in that school named blah, 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 didn't do anything about it, and the school, blah, blah, no.
Which is matter the seriousness of it.
Right.
We just...
Which is why this says you should be taking your concerns to the building administrator or superintendent.
The very next policy, or policy 1400, actually gives a process for public complaints to levy those very same things. So there's still a process to make that happen.
So if you have a complaint, you say, I'm concerned about the case, and then talk about it.
Which we've asked to do in a number of, at least my time on the board, we've asked people to do that in a number of areas, to talk in specifics, or in generalities, not in specifics, and not to mention personnel.
You could just say practically, there's nothing we can do. I'm sorry, Jay. Doesn't seem to be. There's not much we can do to really address Seth's point, which is people coming here doing what they're doing. Right? If somebody's that upset about a situation, we know how to respond. This is more to direct us what we should do. And like Ralph pointed out, we've had those instances where we have shut it down. But there's nothing we can ever put on paper to stop a disgruntled or a parent who feels their child is threatened from saying what they're going to say.
You could just say the board cannot and will not permit complaints involving individual district personnel or students.
That complies with the First Amendment. They can't come to a public body and complain
About specific individuals or students? No.
Well, the next sentence says that they should go and talk to.
The Supreme Court is dealing with other issues right now, so I'm not sure that we want to.
Well, I hope you're asking these questions for a reason, Mr. Peacock, not just for legal exercise.
Well, I guess I am, because I guess my suggestion would be to not have this controlling language. I don't understand the basis.
Then what if Rob stopped somebody from saying something about an individual and it wasn't in the policy? Never said.
Well, Rob's not going to actually be able to stop anybody from saying something.
I'll stop them probably when they say the name, then I have to stop them.
Yeah, he'll ask them, could you not do that? But the person, it's a public forum. They can be ruled.
So then, to get to your point, would it make sense for us to delete that sentence and keep the following sentence, which says persons which discuss matters involving individual district personnel or students should present their comments or concerns to the building administrator or superintendent during regular business hours? Does that?
I like that better because I don't know how you can go.
And then we could also reference policy 1400, which talks about public complaints, which we'll get to momentarily.
Sure.
I actually like I don't like it, but I appreciate the purpose of the sentence that says will not permit public discussions, because even if someone gets started, it provides us a mechanism for stopping it before more of the details become public. And the public discussion, public discussion is a less judgmental phrase than complaints or disciplinary matters or something that would only be negative. I think the key here is public discussion and not, we say, oh, this teacher runs a great program. This teacher has taken kids on trips. This is wonderful. This teacher does a fine job with the robotics team. I don't think that's as much a public discussion. It's just a statement, and I think the problem is trying to get into personnel issues, disciplinary issues, issues involving minors whose privacy should be protected. What if somebody comes in and says, something happened to her daughter, and I don't want it discussed. So I think that this is a fairly inclusive phrase.
What she said, but is HIPAA also personnel?
So the recommendation from the board moving forward is to proceed how?
I'm looking at the left side here.
We're in disagreement.
No, how about we vote on this, and I vote against it, and everybody who wants it votes for it.
Fantastic.
Are we voting on the sentence or the whole?
Right now, what we're voting on is to move this policy to a second reading with adoption at that time.
Yeah, if you like it, vote for it.
Edits,
If you don't, don't.
Right.
And
With edits.
as is. As is. We're going to move it as is without any.
We haven't made any changes to this currently.
But certainly could be edited by the second reading.
By second reading.
All right. Okay. All in favor? That's everyone minus Eldred, who has stepped out for a moment.
Minus,
And
all opposed?
Oh, sorry.
Seth.
All opposed. Seth. Sorry.
And was there a second abstention besides Eldred?
No.
He's not abstaining.
Is
Is he abstaining or is he absent?
I'm going to call him absent.
Yeah, he's absent.
He'll be back. Chris almost missed it. Chris was out.
I came right back in.
Chris
I would have
came
missed that.
And sorry, Seth, I missed the objection.
I will move policy 1400, public complaints, for a second reading and to be adopted at that time.
Anyone? Judy.
second.
Judy will second. Thank you.
Go home.
Jay, this is riveting stuff, but yes. I know.
No, you don't have to stay.
No, it's okay. I'll stay.
But
It'll get much more interesting when we start getting to the student section, I can assure you of that.
That'll be next year.
You'll be next decade.
As Sean has pointed out, after the budget, the creation of policy is our #1 job.
Actually, I would say before the creation of the budget, but that's just me, Rob.
Well, today. But I think, really setting policy is what we are supposed to do. So this is that process.
My only comment about policy 1400, that this was done in collaboration, like a number of the policies, with our administrative team to try to outline a process that they are also trying to use to help field some inquiries and complaints and questions from parents and students, etc.
Anything? Anyone? Okay, all in favor? That's everyone. We've already voted, so Eldred's absent. Oh, he waited. Yeah. But he wasn't here for the motion. So.
I will move policy 1420, complaints about curricular or instructional materials, and policy 1420R, the regulation, for a second reading and adoption at that time.
Second.
Okay, not a long policy.
The only conversation we had about this was the convening of a committee and who should comprise the committee, that this has been a policy that's actually been used in our district in the past on a pretty regular basis, that parents or folks have complained about materials being used, and so we finally, after some conversation, settled on 2 administrators, 2 librarians, 2 teachers, 2 parent representatives, and 2 secondary students if possible. We'll make sure that we have that language there if possible or if appropriate. But we thought, given the fact that any time a school district would remove curriculum from its libraries or from its schools, that's probably one of the more severe actions that one could take in terms of censorship. So you wanted to grant it the amount of due that it deserved, that if we're making that step, that it warranted a serious community look.
So this is...
Scroll down a little bit.
This is designed for a offensive piece of material, not for everyday math.
Could be. Why?
Well, I'm just, it seems as though the policy is designed for, you know, the offensive material.
There's a complaint concerning a textbook, library material, or other instructional material, and protests its use. It doesn't say they find it offensive, they think everyday math is useless, so they're protesting it. Or Shakespeare is irrelevant, so they're protesting it.
But usually it's for one of their children not to read the book.
Sure, but this is
usually, but then this is written broadly to cover anything.
Yeah, that was my only question about this in terms of, it seems like Judy said, the expectation is that it's used for those types of situations, but it's actually applicable to...
It's written broad enough to be able to cover a wide variety.
And do we want that broadness?
Sure. Elder, go ahead.
With the exception being, I'm sorry, Elder, even though there's a committee formed, the committee makes the recommendation to the superintendent has the final say, and then it can also be appealed to the board. So the committee is not actually making the decision, it's making a recommendation to the superintendent.
I've been in this experience twice, and living in it. Policy doesn't seem to address what the community was asking for either of those situations. It was neither the elimination of the book or anything. It was a establishment that the teacher using the book did not do the appropriate work or set it up so that the kids would have some reference point for the material. It wasn't the actual material, it was a lack of preparation. And this, I mean, that says nothing. Obviously, the superintendent will think that, but this actually doesn't say anything about the primary complaint in these situations, from my experience.
But it doesn't prevent us from addressing that either. In other words, what it says was that this committee will make a recommendation. So the recommendation from that committee was, if you use this book, make sure that you do prep work, or you should do this in advance, or a letter should go home. They can make that recommendation according to this policy. It doesn't prevent it from happening. It does not mean that the materials get removed. It means that there's a recommendation to the superintendent, and we deal with that as such. And it could include removal, but it's not what has to happen. Does that make sense?
So you're saying it says that in number 5, where it says make a decision and notify the complainant.
The superintendent shall review the report of the committee and make a decision if there's a decision to be made.
I'm just trying to figure out where exactly the language is.
There's going to be a recommendation from that committee to the superintendent.
Well, and I think...
I got it. I think I got it.
But I would also add that this is boilerplate language which would be applicable to any community, and it is involving not a parent's request that their individual child be excused from a particular assignment, but that a piece of curricular material would be removed and not given access to anyone. So I think Ithaca, the situations you're describing in Ithaca may not be unique to Ithaca, but that would be, it's an unusual situation given, I think, the standards of communities across the state. And it may not address this, but maybe do we have a policy to address more sensitive curricular instruction? This is an extreme case. We're not going to. We've had occasional requests that something be removed from a school or a district, all the libraries in the district, a book or a piece of material. So I don't think it's designed to address your concerns.
You're saying this particular policy doesn't go that far. This is just a more run-of-the-mill complaint.
This is a run-of-the-mill. Well, I don't think that a parental request that something be removed from the district is a run-of-the-mill complaint. And we did talk with principals about what happens in the case of an individual parent objecting to his or her child being exposed to a particular piece of curricular material while this is being decided or discussed. But but do we modify this policy to address your concern? I think that would be my question.
And the concern is what? Is the effective use of the materials?
Absolutely.
Which is in the very first paragraph of the second sentence.
That's what I was looking for.
The board expects district teachers and administrators to recommend books and other materials in accord with sound educational principles and practices and to use them effectively in the classrooms. That's the part you were concerned about.
Yes.
See, Pat, you had it covered. You just didn't know it.
And I
You
did
were
report
ahead
trying
of
to
yourself.
explain it. So
Our policy was better than I thought it was.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you, Brad.
I'm done.
All right. All in favor? Got everyone on that one? How are we doing, Sean?
We're almost to the end. We're moving along, so bear with us. Policy 1500. I move policy 1500, public use of school facilities, for a second reading and be adopted at that time.
Second.
This is not going to be an easy one, so let's have at it. Quick words. I asked Danielle to put in the Dropbox the 4 different forms we use for facilities use. On those forms, you will find that there is some schedule for some of those costs associated listed with the public use are on various forms, and the fee schedule is there as well. That's what I meant to say.
Questions, comments? Brad says it looks good to him.
Well, then, let's go.
We beat this one up before.
I think that was the point.
But I got to push 2 or 3 more, so I apologize. On permitted uses, H, it says one of the permitted uses are child care programs when school is not in session or when school is in session for children of students attending schools of the district, and if there's additional space available for children of employees of the school district. That just means that does not mean that we have to provide. It just means that it's a permitted use. Is that
how it reads?
Is that correct?
We got a letter, remember, from Martha Frummel?
I did not get a letter from Martha Frummel.
Did you get a letter from Martha Frummel about certain things being permitted? Did you?
Let's see.
Maybe yes, no. Yes, thank you. I did get that. That was about access and about right.
Yeah.
You're right. So we'll be addressing this absolutely, and I'll make sure I bring those concerns back up at the next meeting about who has access and under what terms and who's sort of paying for things.
Yeah.
And that's still to be debated. And we look at the forms. There's a number of costs that are associated that probably warrant some conversation. If we go to prohibited uses, keep it right there, Dr. Brown, for a second. If we look at the prohibited uses, currently it says meetings sponsored by political organizations are prohibited uses. I don't know. I'm curious about that. In large part, Seth and I had is it state law?
State law.
What is interesting because we even have forums sponsored by political organizations for the board on district property.
League of Women Voters.
That's not a political organization.
It's not a political organization.
Nonpartisan.
It doesn't espouse it doesn't affiliate with any political party.
Fantastic. Number B causes me a little bit of concern, so we can help me if I'm wrong, but it talks about religious sects or denominations or fraternal organizations. I imagine also mean that I know that there are sororities who are doing work with our students. And does that prevent them from occupying space at the Delta Academy, for example, at Beverly J. Martin?
And why would we have another mentor?
Right, there's other mentoring programs that would either be parts of association organizations, etc. And I don't know what to do with that, but I just wanted to raise that.
Meetings, entertainments, and occasions that are under the exclusive control. And the proceeds are, this is saying for the raising of money.
Where do you see that?
Meetings, entertainments, and occasions that are under the exclusive control of the proceeds are to be applied.
Yeah.
So this is when you're charging money.
For
so if they're
themselves.
This is when you read policy at 1 a.m. So fantastic. I'm good.
I think what I think they can meet
and they can do work, but they can't.
But if they're then charging,
yep,
that changes the status of what they're doing.
So with all that being said, then I have no other additions, questions. I think what I would like to have some conversation at the second reading is taking a look at the applications and forms and seeing, because the schedules aren't aligned as well. Sometimes the custodial fee is $17. Sometimes the custodial fee is $25 an hour. So some folks were charging $600 for a space to use, and they're charging $100 for a space to use. We should probably get some clarity around that as a district. And I know there's a number of folks that are inquiring about this.
Can I just ask a question? There's so many terms in this second paragraph: meetings, entertainments, occasions, and the proceeds. And then it says an association or organization. So any association or organization, even if it's not religious, is excluded from using space where they generate proceeds?
I believe that's how it's reading.
So I want to rent the theater out and charge $5 to have people come in, and I'm an organization. I can't do that.
I believe what everybody does to get around that is make the $5 a donation.
Yep.
It's a tried and true route.
Okay.
And I think that we know is law, New York State law.
Right. So I believe when you have the event there, you can charge. We can allow it to be charged. We're charging rent, but I believe they have to print. It's a donation.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
That's why you see that on the tickets sometimes. Suggested donation or whatever.
Right. We good, Sean?
Yep, for me.
Okay. All in favor? That's going to be everybody, I'm sure. I'm sure it was. Yes, here we go. That's everyone.
Keep moving.
Smoking. All right.
I move policy 1530, smoking and other tobacco use in school premises, for a second reading and to be adopted at that time.
Seconded by Judy.
Yes.
Thank you.
But didn't we?
It's a different smoking policy.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
It would have been fun to be on the board when they had a smoking area at the high school.
Well, what about when you were allowed to smoke in here at meetings?
Did you?
Not me.
Sorry. Yeah.
That was even before me.
All I know is that we have to get a relatively large sign to put in Dr. Brown's car.
Wow. Smoking messes up my sleep.
But all district vehicles should have a no smoking sign, and we want to make sure yours is neon.
Oh.
I love policy.
Glow in the dark bumper stickers.
No smoking. Yeah, no smoking. I love policy. There you go. It's pretty straightforward, I guess, right? All right. No other questions, everyone? That's everyone. Thanks. Even Chris?
We're going to follow the same process we did as the last policy with the flyers. That policy 1740, 1741, and 1742 have generated much conversation in this board over the past year.
Yep.
You see it as it's written here, as was sort of suggested to us by NISBA. So I move policy 1740, relationship with non-public schools, for a second reading and to be adopted at that time.
Seconded by Judy. Questions, comments, edits? Pat, anything?
We went overseas as a board in the summer, late summer.
Thank you for...
Just for clarification, we did go over these as a board for that summer. Folks may remember it was a strange vote. It was 4 yeas, 2 nays, and 2 abstentions? So it didn't really have a resolution at that point in time. That's the reason why, Jay, we don't have an adoption date when you asked that. Because there was no official action taken at that point in time.
Did not carry, right?
Did not carry, right.
The item continues to be modified sports is the issue?
The item continues to be modified sports and extracurricular activities.
Well, just modified sports.
That's all I've seen requests for.
One they can participate in and one they cannot, right?
Depends on the type of student.
This is a non-public school student.
Charter schools are considered non-public?
No, charters are
they are their own district.
Oh, okay.
That's different. They are considered public school students. They have different status than other folks.
That's why it's a different policy.
That's right.
No hoops, no play. Got it.
We will continue to get requests on modified sports, is my guess.
And I think it's probably folks, we have this conversation on the policy committee pretty regularly. I'm actually in favor of it, even while I know the board is split, or we have different opinions on it.
In favor of the way we've got it written here?
No, I'm in favor of changing the language, but I've written it as we've decided as the last time, and I'm following the recommendation of the board, of the policy committee.
You'd like kids, well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Pat, go ahead.
Okay,
Raising your hand.
as the person who knows less about participation in sports than anyone else on the board, I don't feel that I have sufficient information to make an informed decision. The only request that we've ever had comes from parents of private school kids. We've never had someone from the Ithaca City School District come and say, please let these other kids on our team. If we want to revisit this, I would like to have a recommendation from our athletic director. I'd like to have a breakdown of I don't know what sports have a cut policy, what are filled to capacity.
Right.
And I am personally against crafting some kind of policy that says, well, this sport but not that sport, because when you open little chinks, that's where the people wiggle through the loopholes, and then you're constantly basically spinning your wheels trying to uphold a policy as people attack it. And I think simple, fair, comprehensive policies, if we had more information, if we had a report of numbers of students participating, what the sports are, what the recommendations of the athletic director, social and financial consequences of changing the policy, then I would feel competent to really open it up again. But at this point, kids should play, no, kids shouldn't play, I think that's too simplistic to come to any kind of policy resolution.
Okay.
We aren't opening it back up, or we are opening it up?
I'm okay with where it is.
Okay.
We're ready to re-debate it when the requests come.
There has been an official request made to me.
Oh, another one already?
Yes.
Yeah.
For next year. That the people understood that we have a policy in place for this year, and they're respecting that, but they would like the board to revisit this policy to open up modified sports. Particular request came from Montessori parents for next academic year.
And is it for a particular sport or all modified sports?
That's an excellent question. I think it was for a particular sport, but I will ask.
That gets back to Pat's point. I mean, I think what we've said.
It's a particular sport, I believe. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, what we've said when we've merged with public school districts is only if we have space that no one's being cut. You know, that basically there's no marginal cost to having one more child or two more children on the team. Mm-hmm. We've done that. I know last year the request came and it was about modified soccer, where we were in fact cutting kids from our own schools. So it made it easy to say no, we're not going to do it. We added a team, and I don't know, did we accommodate everybody with the second one? So we ended up accommodating all of our own kids.
All of our own kids.
With a second coach, but that was, even then they had two full teams. It wasn't. I understand the problem from a policy standpoint. We want to craft words that, to that extent, that, you know, on a no cut, space available at the recommendation of the athletic director, or
our first attempts at that language were futile at best, I think, and that's why we scrapped it, because we just couldn't find the language for it and couldn't capture the way in which that made sense to anyone that read it other than us without being in the meeting.
Yeah, and then we got into trouble a couple of years ago with grandfathering. Once we allowed the child to, you know,
that's seventh grade, and then we have more kids show up in 8th grade.
Well, no, that same child won't be.
We have more from our schools show up, and we cut them out in the second year. I hear you.
So
there's,
you know, I'm not against.
No good deed goes unpunished.
I know. I'm not against certainly trying to craft language that lacrosse is certainly a sport that it's basically all comers. They certainly encourage participation, and we're all for that. I'm all for that. But it's got to be, the language has to be doable.
Well, there were
Well, since everyone's talking about it, I won't remain silent. I've always been in favor of finding a way to include more kids, and I don't think it's impossible to craft language that does that, even if we do something as simple as, say, at the discretion of the AD. But I know that's not happening, so I'm ready to vote. But I did, since everyone was talking about it, I'll talk about it too.
We do have a policy committee meeting between now and the next time, second readings of these policies. I'm not telling, we so appreciate your presence there too, Mr. Peacock, so please come and join us.
Seth is counting the number of policy committee meetings he's made. All in favor? We're going to look at language with all these over the next few weeks. All in favor? That's everyone but Seth. Those against? Seth?
I move policy 1741, homeschool students, for a second reading and adoption at that time.
Second.
Second by Judy.
If I'm remembering, this is the one, is this the one legally we have no ability to approve this, or was it the other kids from other districts?
What are you talking about? Pursuant to the Commissioner's regulations, homeschool students are ineligible.
Right, that's okay.
To participate in interscholastic sports, the same rule applies for modified sports. That they're still it's at the board discretion for modified, but not interscholastic is.
I got you.
They have to be a bona fide student.
Public school student.
Public school student, and there's a definition of bona fide, and they do not meet it for interscholastic sports. Anything else, Sean?
Nope.
All in favor? That's everyone.
I move policy 1742, charter school students' participation in district-sponsored activities, for a second reading and adoption at that time.
Second.
Pretty short. Any questions? It's been moved. All in favor? It's everyone.
I move policy 1800, gifts from the public, for a second reading and adoption at that time. And the only correction I would make is there's a small typo in the first paragraph, that the number should line up together. It should say $500. We were having some conversations in the policy committee about gifts from the public, and the policy is currently written gives the superintendent some discretion of accepting gifts of small monetary value. We're trying to figure out what would be the appropriate monetary value. One, to protect the superintendent from accepting gifts that may cause some conflict or concern, but also that, so we're saying, for example, if the superintendent accepts an iPad, that'd be worth more than $600. Does he have to bring it to the board every time he accepts an iPad? And we didn't know the best way, so we stuck the number $500 in there, and it's up for a conversation amongst the board, but that's beyond that. Everything else is, I think our conversation is written.
You picked a number.
The cost of the suits.
Wow.
What?
I'll take that.
You discussed it and picked a number, right?
Yep.
I don't think there's a right or a wrong. You picked a number. I'm fine with it.
If you're fine with the number.
Could I just ask, in terms of how we actually implement this, bullet point 2, the gift must not benefit a particular or named individual or individuals, so I couldn't buy soccer balls for the soccer team?
I think that's different than saying, I'm giving this gift for classroom teacher X.
You can't do that.
Because I'm giving this to the school, I'm giving it to South Hill.
So it's just how you phrase it.
Okay. All in favor? That's everyone?
And the last one, oh sorry Jay, go ahead. Here's the vote. And the last policy for the evening for a first reading, no it's not, it's the second to last.
You got 40
There you go. Right. Jumping the gun here. Policy 1925, interpreters. I move policy 1925, interpreters for hearing impaired parents, for a second reading to be adopted at that time.
Second.
And thank you. And the conversation around this was all trying to find an appropriate amount of time to give leeway for the district, and I think we settled on 5 working days.
Yes, we did.
Would you like to include E.1?
Yes, my apologies. And I also like to include 1925E.1 and 1925E.2, which is the application and the request and the response to the request.
Yeah. Good.
Okay. Anything? Anyone? All in favor? Looks like everyone.
And I'll just say for the public, if whoever's staying with us to watch, this is great. We had a conversation about non-native English speakers and translators, interpreters as well.
Yep.
And we're thinking that that's part of that policy will be covered in policy 1900 when we talk about parental involvement. So we'll be coming back to that idea later on. And then the last policy, I move policy 4750, retention of students.
Second.
For a second reading and adoption at that time. This policy I'll speak to briefly. Dr. Landau has been instrumental with other folks. We've had a couple meetings with the ITA and some teachers as well to talk about what is the best way to have a policy like this. We had, I'd say, 3 or 4 at least meetings discussing, revising, having conversations about the policy, trying to figure out what's the best way to include the policy within our current practices of RTI. Conversation about whether or not we want to be a district that retains students to begin with. When do we use a retention policy? And so what we have here is sort of the culmination of some of that work and some of that thinking, but obviously up for discussion and conversation.
Are we good?
Yep.
I don't know if there's any questions, comments, or
Right, we have looked at this policy a few times, it seems.
We have.
We appreciate Matt's work on it. Matt's still awake and here. That's, we appreciate that. So we're good? I'm not seeing anything? Okay, all in favor? So everyone? And on to item E, I believe, right, Sean? I mean, we're done with policy.
That's done with policy.
All right, I appreciate the process and the work. Item E, this really does...
I'll move the resolution calling the 2013 annual district meeting and election of the Ithaca City School District and authorizing related matters as presented in the agenda.
I'll second.
Multiple pages. Danielle's done a great job working with our attorneys, updating all the language you see, the dates, the form, map, etc. Any questions? Sean, go ahead.
One question, just a clarification, is the reason why the 2010, it's called the 2010 Capital Reserve Fund, but the 2013 Capital Reserve?
Whoever drafted it wasn't looking at the last one when they did it.
Should it be fund? Should it be the 2013 Capital Reserve Fund, or no? I didn't know.
Yeah, for consistency, that's probably not a bad idea. I like that.
Yeah.
I think a friendly amendment to the motion would be to change the 2000 capital reserve to the 2000 capital reserve fund wherever it appears.
I'll second that.
Do it to vote on the amendment.
I moved it. I'm asking for the change
with your original motion.
With my original, with permission of whoever seconded.
Yes, it's fine by me.
Yeah, there we go.
No, that's a good catch. Be consistent.
Right, exactly. Anything else?
Just a point of clarification. Where we'll have access to the exemption report as well? The real property tax exemption report? Where
we do see that? When do we see that? It's after the vote. Is it June?
It is after the vote.
Is it June 1 when the assessment roll is completed? I believe it's after June 1, and then we would see Cornell, all the other exempt property in the district. We do end up seeing it. I can't remember, did we get the complete list in Dropbox last year?
I remember seeing paper copy.
Or paper copy? Okay. We do see it, but I think it's after the unfortunately, as with some things with the school budget, other information isn't known until afterwards.
Okay. Lots of information there, and it's all. And I will point out, we are maintaining 12 election sites. We discussed last year regarding the elimination of Varna, but we figured we would just go ahead and include it this year, and we discussed it, and so we're maintaining the 12. So I will point that out. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Okay, Danielle, that's everyone.
And I'm sorry, can I just clarify, did everybody agree to the amendment as well?
Yes. Yep.
Is there an amendment?
And I do believe our last item is the supplemental resolution.
I'll move the supplemental resolution entitled Board Resolution to Sustain a Student Disciplinary Determination. This is not on the agenda. After it's seconded, you want me to read it? Or?
Second by Judy, and
I'll read if you like. Be it resolved that having duly reviewed the record pertaining to the discipline of a particular student, ID number 71002372, the Board of Education hereby sustains the discipline imposed and authorizes and directs the board clerk to prepare a written notice to the student's parents of the board's determination for the board president's approval and signature.
Very good. Moved and seconded by Judy, correct? For the record. All in favor? That's going to be everyone but Seth. I'm sorry, Sean. And Sean. Those opposed? Those abstaining will be Sean and Seth. Sorry, Sean. I didn't look closely enough. Thanks everyone for your work and patience. Any other business by the board or superintendent?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Second by Eldred. Without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Board of Elections is being nice to the worker, except for that.
Exactly, except for that argument.